Welcome to the podcast, Vahbiz.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolute pleasure. So today we're going to be talking about influencer marketing, specifically within the B2B tech space. And our aim is to give our listeners some insights on how to tackle influencer marketing, especially if they've never done it before. But before we dig into that, what drew you to sort of specialize in this area? I know you've had a broader background in B2B marketing, haven't you?
Yeah, I actually had a really great manager, which made influencer marketing look like a lot of fun, which it wasn't so much at the start, like when I started out. And then somehow I never looked back. I kept learning, I took a lot of courses, and then it just became my thing. And initially, social was always like home to me. But then, like, as I drew out and I started learning more things about like audiences are not only going to come to you through social, like the space like developed. So I was like, okay, there's more to this than meets the eye. And then you just grow in your career as well, from like a young college graduate, from somebody who's now like a proper corporate professional. And you just learn things along the way. So I never felt like looking back after that.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I mean, I've been in B2B marketing recruitment for a while now, so a good sort of 15, 16 years. Influencer marketing is definitely getting a bit more traction, isn't it? You know, even a few years back, if I was thinking about influencer marketing, initially I'd be thinking about B2C marketing rather than B2B. But so if you are a business and if you are thinking about this, then why do you think, or what are the benefits do you think there are of doing, influencer marketing for a B2B tech brand?
I think the biggest benefit is to build trust. Because, when we have like a corporate page continuously bombarding, like, oh, we give this or we give that, or we have this event and that event, all that is good and it's necessary 100%. But when you have like a figure that you trust or somebody who has a decent amount of authority, when that person is particularly talking about a particular service, a product, or anything, that builds trust. And he or she already knows like what their audience are looking for, and it's always good for an influencer not to just like, oh, like just because you're paid so you're going to promote it. They need to themselves also like have some sort of faith in the product before they showcase it to the audience. So I think that is like a responsibility on the influencer side. But I think that is the biggest benefit that you have, like somebody with that level of authority actually talking and vouching for the particular product or the service that they're talking about. I think the other benefit is it just breaks the monotony of the whole thing, because it's like a person. You have a face, you have like somebody who is like representing. It's not just a logo, so the connection is more that develops is more real. It's not like, oh, like we know somebody who knows somebody who's used the product, or sometimes you just hear about it in a community and things and you just like chat about it. But this is somebody who you can like go back to and be like, hey, like what do you think, what are the advantages, what are the disadvantages? Like there is a face to the actual thing, and not like just not like a logo that is saying something, or just like a random article or just some thing on Reddit that they read.
Yeah, and I guess it's a little bit like personal branding, isn't it? In a way,
Yeah.
you touched on the fact that people don't buy from organisations anymore. You look at some of the even on
Yeah.
LinkedIn, some of the LinkedIn company pages, they're pretty stale, aren't they? The rise,
Yes.
and we've had in B2B marketing the rise of the personal brand because people want to buy from people, and it kind of comes back to that. We are, person to person rather than being B2B or B2C. So it ties
Yes.
in with that. And I'm a big fan of cycling and road cycling. So I'm always a sucker for looking at what products the influencers are recommending.
Yeah.
So having been on the side of it as a consumer, it definitely does work because you do build that trust and that affinity with an
Yeah.
influencer. So for anybody that's sort of thinking about doing this, then I guess the first step they're going to think about is, how do I actually find, or how do I choose the right sort of influencers for the marketing campaigns? How would you suggest they tackle that?
Yeah, I think the first thing that they need to do is understand where exactly their audience are. Like for mostly for B2B, it's on LinkedIn. you will get your majority of your crowd on LinkedIn. And once you identify that, that's the first step. And once that is done, you need to see who are the people on LinkedIn actually talking about your product, like the kind of product or a service that you want to, want them to talk about. And before that, it is more like, are their followers your audience? Like the people who are commenting on their posts and they're engaging with their content, are those people your audience? Because many a times it so happens that we know people, we know big names, they have huge followers, but they're not exactly the right kind of influencer for a particular campaign that we are probably currently running. They might be good for like another campaign, or maybe they might not be good at all for us. So we really need to check that the people who are engaging with their content, are they really our audience? And once that is identified, then it's like very easy. You reach out to them, you ask them if they're interested in collaborating with you. Most of the times they would ask for like a payment or something. Some other times they would be happy just to speak about us on like a podcast or on their newsletter, and that's how you like develop the relationship. Also, it's like in B2B especially, it shouldn't happen like, oh, I reached out to this person as an influencer, they did what they have to, and then the relationship's done. No, it's not just a one-time thing that you do, or just like a one-odd campaign that you run with them. Like you have to ensure that you're also continuously building your relationship with them, because it shouldn't happen like, oh, I gave you X amount, you said this, and then like somebody, a competitor X, comes along the way, and then you are getting paid, and there goes whatever we've spent, and then they're talking about them. So you have to cultivate that relationship with them as well, and you can do that in multiple ways. You can call them on a podcast, you can have them write a guest blog, involve them in like thought leadership content, ask them for like their guidance, or like give them sneak peeks to anything beta that's getting run. So all of that stuff needs to happen. And unfortunately for B2B, most of the influencer searches are super manual. I know there are endless tools out there that can they claim to help you, and they do to a little extent, but you still have to go in, open that person's profile, see what they're talking about, because sometimes we see people with huge followers, and the only thing they're saying like, oh, I had this for breakfast, I went out to this event, and it's like, yeah, but you're not adding value. Like you did all this and you must be great at that event. You must have really added, given a lot of value to the people who attended that event. But what is it that you're showcasing on LinkedIn or on the platform where we want to connect to our audience through you? So you have to be very careful on who you're like selecting as an influencer. It shouldn't just be like a big name with big followers. Like there's a lot of things that you need to see on the background of the whole thing.
Because there's a bit more to B2B, isn't there? But you could sell into the finance sector as a technology company, but selling into big companies is very different from selling into small companies or even consumers. So you might find an influencer that's perhaps, or somebody, an industry expert that's got a huge following, but actually when you drill into it, as you mentioned, the audience is just slightly different. One thing you touched on there was about an influencer perhaps signing up with you and then signing up with a competitor further down the line. I mean, are there any ways to protect that? Because it doesn't look great, does it? If somebody's one day promoting one product and then the other day promoting a competitor product, it sort of devalues it a little bit.
Yes, 100% that happens. And, once your contract is over, they're not like legally bound at all to not work with a competitor. I think, of course, you can protect that in ways where you develop a relationship with them and, then they're yours. But it's hard and it takes time to build those relationships, and in certain cases, even years. And what is it that they are looking for, because ultimately they're people too. They have to put food on the table too, and they have to do a lot of other things for themselves as well, like their growth and their audience and everything. So I feel like it's always good to continuously have some sort of communication with them, like, okay, like we want to use you as a face to reach our audience, and that all is fine, but what is it that you want? And the one thing that I think has worked the best, at least for me, is I never tell them what to do, what to write, how to sit in a video, and what the background should be and what the colors should be. And I have like seen a lot of people who like literally tell the influencer to the T what needs to be done, and that's frustrating for them as well. It's like, it's just not their natural flow. So once you just tell them like, hey, this is what we want to promote, and you do it however you want, like if your style is funky, if your style is serious, if you want to just talk about it, like it's on you, your audience. So that is the first icebreaker sort of a thing. And then you continuously ask them, like sometimes just have a random chat with them, like how's family, how's things going, like if they're like running a bigger company, like if they're a co-founder, give them the product to use as well, like, oh, we'll give you like 3 months free instead of like maybe a month or something, or we'll give you like a really good discount. When you give them like the deal, you give them a package deal as well, like we'll give you a really good discount versus what we would otherwise sell. So always ask them what is happening on that side of the screen or the fence or whatever, versus just like, oh, we want this from you, we want that from you, oh, the campaign is done, we got good metrics, so we're good, like toodles. It's just not how it's supposed to be done.
No, it's got to be a true partnership, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And you hit the nail on the head. It's got to be authentic too, because if you've
Yeah.
built up an audience will see through it straight away if the
Yeah,
influencer
they
isn't
do.
acting like he or she normally does. So, and
Yeah.
they're obviously very protective of their own audience too, aren't they?
Oh
Because
yeah.
their livelihoods depend on it. So, cool. So, I mean, let's say, for instance, we've identified, an influencer or some influencer that can help us. Then, what do you think are some of the most effective channels then, but also content formats then for this?
I think for B2B, mainly the channel is LinkedIn, and whatever it is that works for the influencer. Like if most of them are really comfortable doing video content, because we've seen like the growth of video content happening. And again, I think on a video, you can hear the person, you can see the person, there's like a face. So that's always good. Like it just builds like the connection. It's not like just a text post saying, oh, Demandbase is really cool, use Demandbase. Like we can see that on happening on the brand page as well. So I think that is the main thing. Also now LinkedIn has started like this reels kind of a thing, which also helps, like just short snippets that are really like quick bites. So they can also promote over those things. And unfortunately, TikTok in India is banned, but I've heard that it's really working really well in the US. So yeah, if TikTok is working really good, that's another platform that people can leverage.
Well, I can't remember what the situation is in March in the US for TikTok, but I
Yeah.
know it was going to be banned, but then Trump came in, didn't he? Cool. And, it sounds like LinkedIn's almost becoming a little bit like TikTok with the promotion of Reels. It's all about getting engagement and people to stay on the platform. So this, I think this is probably my next question is going to be one of the questions that a lot of people think about with this, especially today. We're recording this in 2025. The economic situation is reasonably tough for people. There's been a lot of change within B2B tech companies, certainly here in the UK, and I know over in the US. So the pressure's on for marketers. If you're a marketing leader, you've got to be very careful with what you're choosing to do. And it all comes down to, a lot of the time, not always, because you do need an element of brand building too, but it comes down to return on investment. So if somebody's thinking about doing influencer marketing, then how would you get them to measure return?
So this always gets tricky. no matter what tool you use. So always start with things that are easy and you can see and you can measure it like super quickly. What kind of engagement is there? What kind of likes are we getting? What is the comments that we're getting? How many reposts are happening from the influencer or like their company pages, or whether they're doing it only for like our demand-based page. So all of those things. How many video views they are getting. The average time, the time of the video, the views, average time the views have taken place on the video. So whatever you can see and easily measure, that's the best, and that is where you should ideally start. And then also, it's like when you're running an influencer campaign, it shouldn't be like dry, like we think that you're like really good, just post this for us, or we selected you on like our top 30 list, so hey, congrats. You should go back and like give them something, like give them some cookies or like a money tree. There's so much you can do now, and you can like be super creative with the swag that you're giving, and like gamify the whole thing. And also see like how many people have responded back to you, or how many have actually bothered to share the creative that you've sent to them, or like filled up the form to like, receive the gift from you, and all of that stuff. When it comes to measuring it monetarily, it's always a little bit tricky, because when you're just doing lists and when you are giving somebody credit, there's not much that you can do except just monitor the kind of reads, or like the number of reads that has happened on that particular blog, the views, the average time, just the website traffic on that particular URL. So that is the things that you can measure on that side. But if you have paid a particular influencer and they are, doing a particular campaign, that is when you can give them UTM links, which is the best thing that you can do, and monitor the traffic, monitor what kind of audience that they're bringing, and the rest is just a lot of surface level metrics when you're having events and things like that, where you've invited like an influencer to speak. So how many people have come just to listen to the influencer, versus like, oh, this is a demand-based event, so we have to be there. And also when you're a sponsor at other events, when we have like influencer partnerships, so what kind of people have actually come back and asked, like, oh, we know Demandbase is a sponsor, like, and we want to connect to like for a demo, or we want to connect with somebody. So what kind of people have come back? Are they really like our ICPs, or it's just like they just wanted to build a relationship? How many demos did we get from the particular influencer who was there at the event? Or if there's like an influencer partnership, then how many people really questioned about Demandbase? So you can measure all of those things as well.
Do you think it's realistic to be able to put a figure on it in terms of sales then, or should you be setting your expectations that it's more around more top of the funnel brand building, more of those kind of engagement metrics that you're talking about, essentially getting in to that person's audience? Do you think you should set your expectations more on kind of like that top of funnel stuff, or do you think it's realistic that you should be able to say, do you know what, off this campaign we actually generated £20,000 in sales?
I think it depends on the kind of campaign that you're doing. I think when you're doing like just lists, it's totally fine if you just have like the surface level metrics and everything looks good and people have come to your website. But when you're like paying the partners, like the partnership influencers, like for example, we have like 30 MPC and we have women in sales. That's when you really have to like go like a level or two deeper, like, oh, like we're fine with these, but what is it that we've got from you guys back? Like how many people have registered, and from these registrations, like how many people really are like matching to what the kind of audience that we want, and their email addresses, like if we would want to reach back out to them with like a discount code or things, like are we getting that sort of proper data from them as well? That is when you do go like a level or two deeper. But most of it, when it comes to measuring in terms of sales, does get a little tricky, because we've had situations where we've just made a list and we've like nominated the people on the list, and they've come back and reached out to us after a year or so saying, oh, I was on this list, so I know about Demandbase, but that time I was in a different company, or they didn't have the budgets, but now like I want Demandbase in the new firm. I have grown, I am like in a leadership position, so now I can vouch for Demandbase to come. So it gets really tricky unless we really know like, oh, this person's reached back out to me or somebody who's run the campaign. They would probably just go on the website, book a demo, and we would never know where the person exactly came from. So that happens as well.
Yeah, gotcha. What about, I can think of some organizations that have done this then, but I mean, have you got an example that you could perhaps share around this?
So we did the most recent campaign around like our advertising influencers, and we tried to showcase like through ads we get growth. So it was a really fun campaign where we selected people who we did a top 20 advertising trailblazers list, and we selected people who were really good. And they speak about like Google ads and how paid ads are really helpful in B2B. And we once we selected them and gave them the recognition that they deserved, we sent them like these money trees, because that represents growth. So we did like this fun campaign around them, and pretty soon we're also going to invite them on our podcast or like thought leadership forums and all of that. So far, like among all the campaigns that I have done, my personal favorite was one that we did with my ex-manager. It was also an advertising campaign where we sent unicorn piñatas to people, and that was the time when we said that we have the unicorn advertising solution, and people were bursting the piñata, the kids were bursting the piñata, and they posted it on LinkedIn, and once we saw like, oh, the people are posting it, we also sent them like Grove cookies, because they were like kids who were doing it. So it was really nice. So that was a campaign that's my personal favorite. But we do have another campaign coming up by the end of this month, which is also going to be something like really crazy and really fun. So I'm just going to wait and see how that goes before I give that campaign the top position in my favorites. But yeah, I think up until now, it would be the unicorn one.
Great stuff. What about some mistakes? I mean, you've done this yourself. So for people who perhaps are going to do this for the first time, what sort of mistakes should they avoid then? What are the common mistakes that happen?
I think firstly, it's like, don't tell the influencer what to do. Tell them what you expect out of them, or if you have like a landing page in particular that you want like them to promote in the newsletter and all of that stuff, that's fine. But do not go up to them and tell them to the T what they need to do, how they need to talk, if they really need to wear like the branded shirt and all of that. That is something many people do, and it's a super common mistake, and it just spoils the whole fun. Do not do that. And the other thing is, people forget that an influencer is also a human at the other side of the screen, and it happens sometimes when you have pressure to like bring that much amount of engagement, or like, oh, why are we not seeing this person talking more about us, or where is the metrics, like we haven't seen that amount of growth, or the likes are low, the comments are low, and sometimes that just happens. Also, because LinkedIn's algorithm keeps changing a lot, so it's not like, oh, it's the influencer's fault, and it's really easy to blame them. It's like, oh, like, you did this post and you got so many likes, but you didn't get that many likes on the post that you did for us. So you shouldn't idly blame them. I mean, it's tough to say, but it's not like, oh, it's not their responsibility to get X number of likes. Like, of course, they'll do their level best because they do want the business from us. But you have to be like respectful and not be like, super pushy and like, oh, you did not get this. We've paid you X amount of money. We expected this amount of likes. if that's the case, ensure that you've had that communication before the contract is made and before the contract is signed. Otherwise, it's just going to be very messy. They're not going to be wanting to work with you. Another thing I feel is sometimes influencers have things going on in their personal lives and they're not able to deliver. So give them that space, give them the time, like have that communication as well before the contract is signed. Like in case we want this delivered on a Monday and you give it to us on a Wednesday, how much, cut would that happen? Would there even be a cut, or there wouldn't be a cut on like late delivery? What does that look like? If we want changes to the video, if we've seen it and we feel like maybe you can just alter this part just a little bit, then what does that look like? And don't go and tell them to alter every single thing in the video, because that's just like you're just doing the same thing. You're just telling them what to do. Unless you really feel like, okay, the influencer shouldn't be saying this thing, only then, and give them the time to like edit that and come back to you, because mostly they're working with 10 other, companies and other things as well. So it's not like, oh, I told you today and you ping them again tomorrow saying, oh, we haven't got this yet. Like give them the time, give them the space, and keep like it's always good to over communicate versus just like assume and then be like, oh, where's this, oh, where's that, we haven't got this, we haven't got that. So communicate with them and please pay them on time. Do not or like if you're working with a really big name, they usually take an advance payment, but if there's somebody who's new and they're just recently starting out and you want to give them a chance because they're really good, please pay them on time. Don't hold that back.
Well, a lot of these influencers are running effectively small businesses, aren't they? They are the business sometimes. So and it's a small industry. So if you're not going to treat your influencers well, like you would your customers or your prospects or your employees, whoever it might be, it does get around, doesn't it? So
Yes.
cool.
Yes.
Last couple of questions for me then. In terms of developments, you've been in this industry, you've been doing influencer marketing for a little while. I've seen it springing up left, right, and centre a lot more. I've seen it in action with a lot of companies too. How do you see it evolving in the sort of medium to long term?
I think medium term is still okay. We will still have like more fun and human content that's happening, and more like non-serious things like, oh, they have this and they have that. I don't see that I don't see a lot of videos like that happening. More like, oh, did you do this? Did you do that? Have you heard about this? Like fun stuff. The one thing that I am looking forward to at the same time afraid of is these AI influencers that are coming up. I don't know. I know that they're doing pretty decently well in the B2C space. I'm not really sure how they're going to perform in the B2B space, because in B2B, it's hard to build trust anyway, and there's like a ton of competition happening. So I don't know how that's going to look like, but I am excited. Like, should we be experimenting with some AI influencers in the B2B space? I would say no for now, but I mean, you never know. Like you blink and the LinkedIn algorithms changed. You blink and there's something else happening and the world's totally changed. So yeah, we don't know what the future holds. I do see that happening for sure in the B2B space as well. I just don't know how credible people are going to look towards them. Like, are they really going to trust AI influencers? I don't know. I think that time is going to tell.
Yeah, I can't see it. I mean, I'm seeing it a bit more on YouTube. There are channels that have faceless channels, aren't they, which are purely developed through AI, which is crazy when you think about it. But I think, like you said, it's the trust factor, isn't it? So, and we are, very hard to please businesses when we're parting with our cash. Cool.
Yeah.
Last bit of advice then from yourself, Vahbiz. What is your last or one piece of advice? So anybody who's thinking about starting B2B influencer marketing, what would that be?
Don't be afraid to like experiment If the campaign goes wrong, it's fine. You don't have to like really panic. It's not the end of the world. But just because you're afraid that it'll go bad, or oh my god, like this is not going to work out at all, don't be afraid to like experiment. Some of the campaigns that when we were like discussing, they sounded like really ridiculous. Like, oh my god, is this person really gonna like this gift? Is this the kind of swag we should send? And it turned out to be absolutely amazing. So like keep experimenting, because sometimes what you think is gonna work out 100% wouldn't, and sometimes where you're like a little dicey, it's like I don't even know, is gonna like perform really, really, really well. So yeah, just don't be afraid, and have fun. Like no matter what you do, whether it's influencer marketing or not, just have fun in what you're doing. Don't be like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. Like don't be afraid, and speak to more people. Learn things, and you can ask a lot of questions. Usually we feel shy to ask questions. We feel like, oh, like would that be a dumb question, or am I being too pushy? But just ask it regardless. Like you would rather look stupid for that particular moment than when you're like speaking to, let's say, like a leader or somebody and you wouldn't know. So yeah, ask questions and just have fun with what you're doing.
I think that's some good advice. Test, experiment, have fun. Yeah, it all sounds good to me. So Vahbiz, thank you very much for giving up your time today. It's been fascinating talking to you. For anybody that's got any questions on this, what's the best way of them reaching out to you?
You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm mostly super active. And yeah, I think my email ID is also over there, so feel free to email.
Awesome. You're a superstar. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.